Hello and welcome back. So here we are, back again, and we're going to do some coding. Last time we went through a very complicated function called trigger callbacks, which used an object that a different function builds up in order to go through it all and call all the callbacks in it that are appropriate for the event that was just triggered. This time around, I want to quickly review that function, and then we're going to get into reviewing the old, original, or previous version of widget.js, which is what this library was built on. I also, if you'll notice maybe, have a new microphone. And I know I said that a couple episodes ago. It turns out that I wasn't setting the proper input source, so I was using my just regular laptop input. So I think a little of the sound from previous videos sounds kind of choppy, but that's okay. So we'll move on and get better and better with time. And yeah, so after that, after we review the old widget code, I think from there we're going to try to write some tests, or no, we're going to read through our current code and then write some tests. I'm not sure how far we'll get with the testing today. I have about an hour, hour and a half, but we'll see how far we get. Okay, so with that being said, let's go back into this trigger callbacks and this when function. So the idea with this when function is that we're going to export this entire file, this switch.js library. And so I'll be able to call something like switches when, and then I'll be able to put in the switch name that I want to look out for, and then I can just put a function if I want. And this is basically going to give me back some switch data every time this is turned on, every time it's turned off, and every time it's toggled. And the way it does that is you can see, oh sorry, so I'm actually I should pass this in as an object. So it'll be like switch name, and then this, and then like callback, and then that. So I have something like that. Okay, so so yeah, the way it does that is if I pass in switch name, it gets switch name. That's the only one that's really required. And then if it doesn't get action type and it doesn't get switch element, it's going to set those keys to some kind of any key. So it's going to be any dash and then whatever, right? In this case, it's going to be an auto-incrementing number. It really doesn't matter what we set it here to here as long as it's unique. Okay, and then so for this is going to end up being, in this example, it's going to end up being switch name, so that's going to be like that. This is going to be like any, and we'll just say 1, and then this is going to be any 2, and then we're going to set it to the callback, and let's just in here console log. I don't know, like switch changed, and we'll pass in the switch data. So this callback is going to be equal to this right here. And how are we going to call that callback? Well, trigger callbacks is going to be called every time an action happens. So that's on, that's on off, and that's on toggle. So switch name, let's say, for example, is going to be an exact match. We're going to search in all callbacks for the switch name. We're going to find an object for that, right? Because in the example we built out, we have objects for each of these. And of course, I'm being an idiot right now, so I'm glad that I'm going through this code. So there's a problem here. So all callbacks is an object. I'm creating these keys okay, right? But I'm not creating the objects okay. So the what I want to do is this should be an object, no matter what. And then if there's no action type here, action type is going to be defined. So we're going to create an object for action type. So yeah, this function ends up being a tiny bit more complicated than I thought at first. And here we're going to have the switch element, whether it was defined or not. Okay, so that's cool. So I'm not sure how to document these things. I think it's fine how it is. I mean, maybe what we do is we make this 4, this 5, this 3, this 2, and we just add like a quick string up here, a quick like doc string up here, just saying, you know, create a default object for switch name in all callbacks. It's not the best doc string, but at least, you know, it's something. And then if action type isn't defined, generate a fake, we'll say like key name, because that's more accurate, and key name, the all callbacks. Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it's doing. It's all like it's not just generating the fake key name, but you can kind of see. It's kind of obvious what it's doing, especially if you read this first line. And I think this should work, right? So yeah, we'll end up creating an object here, and then we're setting a key on this object that we created up here, right here. And this is definitely not going to be undefined because we're checking to see if it's undefined here, and if it is, we're generating a key for it. And then the same thing for this. Okay, so that should work now. Okay, so that's cool. And then, so we have this. So, so I don't know. I mean, I can create the object for us too, right? So we can have an idea of what it looks like. Let's put this in quotes, any-1, and then it's going to be any-2, and then we're going to have the function, and it's just going to look exactly like this. And I'm not sure why this is messing up the syntax highlighting. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's valid code. We can test it out in Chrome. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, perfect. So let's go back here. So this is what we'll end up creating if we call this function, and so we'll be able to access the callback, or like this is what this will be doing here, right? This can translate to this, right? Because we're just showing, you know, each step. These are going to be auto-generated, and we're going to get the callback. Okay, now in here, the path we're going to take for this is we have the switch name, okay? We have the action type. No, we don't. We don't have the action type, so we're going to go down here instead. We're going to loop through all of the keys on this object, which will give us the action keys. For this value, remember we have, in this example, any-1, and is any key, all it does is check the index of any on this key name and sees that it's equal to 0, which just means that it's at the start of the string. So this is going to return true because it is an any key. And then we're going to check to see if the element we passed in is there. And yeah, so what is action type in this example? Action type is going to be something like on, off, or toggle. And so on, off, or toggle is not something we're going to find in this object because we're pretending like this when is the only when that we've called. If we've called when multiple times and we're listening to multiple events, it's possible that this object is more complicated. It might have exact, on and off, event listeners that it's listening for. But in this example, it's not. So so it's going to go through. Yeah, and if it had multiple, it's not like it's not going to go through this one too, right? So like, or sorry, not this one. It's definitely going through this one because there's always a switch name. If you've called when at least once, right? If you've never called when, this object here will just be an empty object, right? It'll just be like that. So we'll get an undefined for this, and we'll just skip it altogether. But if we've called when at least once on this particular switch name that's being triggered, whose callbacks are being triggered, this is going to return true. Then we're going to get to this point. It's possible that we have an on action in there, right? So then it's going to go through with all of this stuff. But no matter what, since we don't have an else after this is going to happen too, right? So we're going to go through the any keys too, even if, yeah, the any key is the action key, which in our case it is, right? So we have an any key for the action key, we have an any key for the switch element. Okay, so we're going to check, is it an any key? We're going to go in here, we're going to see, okay, we know we have this. Now we have this action key, which is, any-1. Do we have the switch element? In our example, we have a string there, so it's not going to match an element there, okay? So we're never going to get to this. But either way, right, because we don't have an else here, we're going to do this. So we're going to look in all callback switch name action key. Inside of this object, all of the keys are equal to element keys. And for our example, again, we don't have elements in there as the keys. We have this any-2 string. And so this is going to be any-2. We're going to see, is this an any key? And we just said it is, right? It's an any-2. And so we're going to call it. We're going to call this function. So the more I look at this, the more I like it. I know it's a little bit complicated, but it allows us to do some pretty flexible things. We can have a switch name that we pass in. We can have an action type, or we have to have a switch name that we pass in. We can have an action type, but we don't have to. We can have a switch element, but we don't have to, and we have to have a callback. So I think that's pretty cool. I think we did a good job with this. Obviously I laughed it off at first when we were first creating it yesterday, but I think it's a pretty cool little way of doing it. One thing I do want to kind of clarify in here is the documentation strings. So here we check for switch name. If present, continue down the main path. So here is where I run into problems. So check for specific action. If present, continue down main path. 3, I think this should be like 3 and then like A, right? So here is what we're doing down the main path, right? And I think this should be 3B because it's not actually an alternate. It's like it's going to happen anyway, right? So we're going to check for this, and then we're going to do this. So it's like A and then B, right? If it was an alternate thing, I don't know, I might label it the same way, or I might actually put like a 4 here, right? Because it's like, I haven't I haven't decided. I've only recently started even adding numbers. But I think that makes kind of sense, right? That's kind of like, okay, we're going to go down this path, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And these are kind of related. They're kind of on the same level, right? And then here, so what I think this is checking for the specific action. I think this is like a 2A, and then this is like a 2B, and then we can say like 2C, and then like 2D. And the reason for that is because I just want to make it clear that like this and this one are kind of related, right? We're looking here at the action key, like that's the point of this, and we're looking here for the action key, right? This is just if it's been defined, and then this is, if it's one of our any keys, right? And then we're going down here. So this is kind of like an alternate path to this, but not really, and they're kind of related. So I think it works. So I think that kind of makes it make more sense for me. I think I could just as easily make this like, like a whole different number. Like this could be 4, right? And it could be like 4A, 4B, 4C. But I think this works just as well, and it kind of shows that they're related. I don't know. The only thing that we'll be able to tell if it works or not is when I come back to it in a couple months from now, and if it makes more sense to me this way. Okay, so let's just say like creating all callbacks object properly, and then like adding getter dot strings. Okay, and we'll push that out. Okay, so now we have when. We're not going to expose trigger callbacks. We're not going to expose as any key. I know I mentioned several times last time that all of this when stuff should probably be in its own file. But I'm not going to do that yet. This is a lot of code that we've written, huh? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is check widget.js for any missing functionality. So this is the original code. In this example, I use classes a lot. I don't use data attributes quite as heavily, and I certainly don't use as advanced of a syntax inside the data attributes. I ended up not liking the classes because I use classes a lot for styling and for like other functionality, other JavaScript functionality, and it was like getting in the way because for this library to have data attributes and classes, it was getting confusing, right? There were 2 separate places I was keeping track of this data. And now all of this functionality has been condensed into this one data switches attribute. So everything but this is included in data switches, and then we have data switched on, I think. Let's make sure about that. Not that it matters that much. So we have switches, we have actions, we have stop, and we have on. So yeah, as far as like this section goes, this class, this data attribute, and this data attribute have been replaced by these 2. And this single one has taken over this class, this data attribute, and this data attribute. So I like that it's more terse. I like that it's just in the data, everything's in the data attributes. Just makes sense to me, and I can still use, whether a widget is active or not as, for styling purposes. And, if you're curious, with the new syntax, if I want to, in my CSS, so this is CSS, for example, this is how I would do it. I would say data switch on, and then I would do this selector, so this is like the tilde one, which means that it's separated by spaces, and then I would do like switch name 2, for example, and this would probably be under some like random, like class, like let's just use bundle for example, because that's what we've been using a lot, and so this is like SAS, for example, so we just nest it under here, and we do something like and. So this stands for like, this is the same kind of selector as like that, right? But we're just able to nest it under here, and then this would be all the activated classes. So like, we could say like display block, and then like by default, we're gonna not display this bundle, but if we clicked on an action element, then this switch is going to get turned on, and that's going to make this display block, right? So that's like a really simple example of how to use this, and it's just as flexible as classes, I think, and also gives us the power of having everything just in data attributes, right? So for example, with the new syntax, we have switch name and switch name 2 here. With the old syntax, I guess the CSS isn't really the problem. So let me just show you like what the element would look like. So the switch itself would look like this, and then W dash like switch name, and then like W dash switch name 2, and then when it was activated, it would be like W dash switch name, and then like active, and then W dash switch name 2 active, and you can see like just reading through. So this is Jade, not Jade, it's PUG syntax. So this is just like a shorter way of writing HTML. But even with this shorter way, you can see like it's kind of confusing. It's not like clear what this all means, right? I kind of have to like read through it and be like, oh, okay, I'm looking for these things. This one's active. What's the name of the widget? Okay, and kind of parse that out. Whereas now it's just like this random div element, and then with Pug I just space separated, I think, or is it? I think it's in parentheses. So then we do what is it? Data switched on, like that, right? And I guess to define the widgets also, we have like data switches, and we have switch name and switch name 2. So it's actually like a little bit longer, but yeah. So it's a little bit longer in the simplest case, but for me, this is a lot easier to read, and I can also do something like this, where I put these on separate lines, right? And so now I have a little section where I'm defining which switches this element has, and a little section where I'm seeing if they're on or not, and it's a lot simpler than the old way. That being said, I'm still going to go through the old way because I spent a lot of time writing this code and making it work, and making it work how I expect it to. So I'm just going to read through it a little bit and make sure I'm not missing out on any functionality that I might want to have in the new switch library. I'm going to read this little piece of documentation. So why have a prevent element? So in the new example is a stop element. In general, it makes things a lot more flexible. You can feel comfortable nesting widget and trigger elements inside each other because you can always prevent some of them in certain cases. Here's an example use case. You want to toggle trigger inside the widget. Okay, you want the toggle trigger, so that's like the action toggle inside the widget, and not to be the widget itself. And you want auto deactivate enabled. So that means you click to toggle it, right? If you click on, if you click outside of the element or inside of the widget even, it's going to close. Okay, and you don't want clicking the widget to cause it to deactivate itself. Okay, so in the widget, you don't want it to deactivate itself. In this case, we can add a prevent a prevent element on the widget itself. So the widget itself would say like be called like widget, right? And then you would have a prevent or like a stop with the new syntax that would say, stop widget. And then inside of it, you'd have a trigger, and it'd say trigger widget. So you would trigger the widget, and then if you clicked in the widget, it's not going to deactivate, right? So that would solve that. The other way of solving that using what we have, like if we didn't have this, what could we do? Nothing really, right? Because we have the auto deactivate. If we didn't, so we could have done this. We could have not had auto deactivate built in, even though it's one of the most common things I want to do, right? Because I want to have a drop-down menu. I want clicking this button to pop this thing up, and then clicking outside of it, I want it to close it. But let's say we didn't have auto deactivate. I guess in that case, the default would be that clicking it would pop it up, clicking inside of it wouldn't close it, right? That would be the key. And then clicking outside of it also wouldn't close it. Or clicking outside of it, yeah, okay, so it would auto-close it, right? So the default most common case is that's what I want, right? So like I have a drop-down menu, I click inside of it, doesn't auto-close. I click out, and it does, no, it would have to not auto-close in order to make it more flexible. Okay, so the default, if we're not having an auto-close, option, is that you click this trigger, it opens this widget, wherever you click, it's not going to auto-close it, right? And then, if you want it to auto-close, what you would do is put a trigger on the body, and then the trigger would close it, right? So you'd have a bunch of triggers on the body saying, close this widget, close that widget, close this widget. And if you have like, 20 widgets on the page that you want to all auto-close, you'd have to have all of those. And then you have to consider, okay, well in that case, the body, well, this widget, inside of this widget is part of the body, right? So is there a special case then for that where, we don't, even if we have the trigger on the body, that inside of the widget, it's a special case, so clicking inside of it never auto-closes it. And so if you want to close it when you click in the widget, for example, if you have a menu that's like a help menu, and you click inside of it to go to like the help guide, you might want to open that up in a new tab, but also close the menu. In that case, you could make the menu itself have a trigger to close it, right? So it gets a little complicated. With this way where you have the stop, all you have to do is have auto enabled and put the stop on the widget or the switch or whatever you call it, and then you don't have it, everything's explicitly defined. You know what's happening. I think there's probably, now that I'm like thinking about it a lot, I think there's probably like a simpler way of doing this. But I don't really want to think about it because we just finished writing the switch library. But okay, let me just think about it real quick. So if we had the trigger, and we had the widget, and the widget, clicking inside the widget doesn't auto-close it, but clicking outside of it does auto-close it. Then what if we want like a details expansion, right? So we click it, and then we want it to expand. Clicking inside of it obviously doesn't close it, but clicking outside of it, we also don't want it to close. I think that's hard to do. Yeah, I think in that case, we would still need some kind of stop or prevent element, and we would want to wrap the whole body in it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so maybe there's not a simpler way. If you can think of a simpler way, that I would love to hear about it. Because, yeah, I mean, I'll eventually release this library to the public, and then, other people can use it. Okay, so we have GetInfo. So GetInfo, you can call this on a widget. I'm going to talk in terms of the new syntax. So I'm going to call these switches instead of widgets. So you can get the switch info. So that's going to be the switch name. It's going to be whether it auto deactivates or not, and whether it has a custom name. That's kind of useful. I can't really think of a case where I need that right now, so I'm not going to include it. But it might be nice. Is activated. Is activated. Is widget active? What do I pass into here? It must be a name. Yeah. So it's an ID, a name, and the element. Okay. So that might be useful. But again, right now I can't really think of a case. Activate, deactivate, toggle, we have those. On activate, on deactivate, on toggle, we have those. Those are in our when function. Trigger callbacks, that's part of all that stuff. Let's go down to the main code. So in this case, I put it at the bottom. So we get the document click, we have the actions we want to trigger, we have the target element. We look through the target element as well as all of the parents. I just realized that I broke this. So I didn't intend to. Oh shoot! I didn't intend to break this old code because I still want it to work. But I broke it by rewriting the getParents function for the new code. So I'm gonna just fix that real quick. So I want to include the current element, the selector is going to be that, and the element is going to be that. Okay, and we'll put these on separate lines so that we can see everything at once. And delete that. Okay, so elements to look through, we get the parents, target element, we get everything here, and we include the current element. So basically we're looking for all the triggers and all the prevents. We loop through everything, we get the action info from it, so that's going to be like an object like this that tells us the type, tells us the action, tells us the element. The type might be prevent. I actually like that. So I'm just going to add it really, really quick. So you can, I don't know, maybe I don't. Right? So like parse switch stop. Yeah, switch stop. So that's here. So what I could do is loop through all of these and make sure they have type of stop on them. And then here I'm not just assuming that ones that don't have action type are stops. But I don't know. I'll leave it for now. It's a little bit annoying, but it's one less loop, right? Okay, so we have action types, trigger and prevent, actions for trigger, toggle, activate, and deactivate. So that's the same as toggle on and off for ours. Actions for prevent, we don't have any. So trigger actions are going to look like this, and prevent actions are going to look like this. So yeah, the only difference is that prevent actions have a type of prevent instead of trigger, and they don't have an action. If action type is prevent, we push it into prevented actions. If it's an action type of trigger, we see if it's been prevented by looping through all the prevented actions. And we see if the ID has already been triggered. By seeing if it's inside of actions to trigger, which is something we add to down here. If it has, then we do not include it. So you can see if it's prevented or it has already been triggered, we don't put it in actions to trigger. And that's because, like we were talking about a few videos ago, if it's been prevented, we just want to remove it altogether. It doesn't matter if it's toggling off, toggling on. It's just a stop element is just a dead zone for that widget. And then the ID has been triggered already. For that example, if there's a trigger that's wrapped inside another trigger, and the first trigger says turn it on, and the second trigger says toggle it, we don't want to turn it on and then toggle it off. We just want to turn it on. And that's just an opinion of mine that if, like, most likely, if you have a trigger inside of a trigger, you want the trigger that's clicked on, that's the closest to being clicked on, to be the thing that ends up doing the action. And so it's a little forgiving on our part, right? We could wrap that trigger with an element that has a stop on it, and so that would accomplish the same thing. But in this case, I'm just saying, hey, if there's two actions, they might be doing the same thing, they might be doing different things, but they're on the same widget. Just have the first one that comes up, the one that's closest to the area you clicked on, have that one be the action that goes through. Okay, and then we have actions to trigger, and we trigger the action, and then we auto deactivate the activated widgets. Let's look at, so I think we have everything that we need. I think trigger action, let's just see what this does real quick. So yeah, we get all the widget elements with that ID. I don't know why I select like the W class as well as this, because this is most likely going to be unique on its own, but that's fine. And then if it's activate, we activate it. If it's deactivate, we deactivate it. If it's toggle, we toggle it. Use widget active, that's a cool thing. Get widget custom active class. So we look at the active class, we parse it, parse multiple actions. I'm not sure what that, this is, I don't know, this is returning an array of objects? I don't know why, I mean, I know this library works, so I'm not worried about that. Okay. Okay, so this gets all the active classes, and then I filter it by the widget ID I'm looking for, and then I get the first one because I'm assuming there's only one there, and then this is weird code, right? But so this is gonna take a widget ID, so like a widget name or a switch name, right, and the widget element, and it's going to give me back the custom name for this widget element, and I'm going to use that, I think, to apply the active name. Yeah, so like if it has a custom name, then it's going to be added to the class list. If not, it's not. It's a little crazy. But I mean, the thing is, this is one of the earliest attempts at writing this library and like making it really powerful. So in fairness to myself, I didn't know I was going to build all of these features into it. I think it kept like expanding in my mind, like what it should do. Okay, so here, parse single action, what does this do? Single action, we match beginning of the string followed by anything, followed by oh, and it's non-greedy, so followed by anything non-greedy. So it's going to like eat everything up, eat all the characters up until it gets to a square bracket, and then it's going to again eat everything up non-greedy until it gets to an ending square bracket, and that's how I was parsing the attributes before, because I had like the argument and like the main parameter, and then I'd have square brackets with like the sub actions in there, and then I would have, I think, another one. So I think I also have like a parse multiple actions. Yeah, so I have a parse multiple actions. Yeah, and I was splitting all these up with these bars, separators, whatever, I don't know what you call them. And so yeah, so I was splitting it on that, and then I was parsing the single actions, and then it was giving me the parsed action array back, which gives me, something like that. So kind of cool. I think we're doing a little bit better now. I think the code's a little bit cleaner now. I think it's a little bit easier to understand now. I would, however, like to take I think at least the simple example, as well as the context, and just like explain what it's doing better. Okay, trigger on, off, and toggle actions from a clicked element onto all of its corresponding okay. Trigger on, off, and toggle actions from a clicked element onto all of its corresponding switch elements. How about instead turn on, off, or toggle all switches or multiple switches by clicking an action slash trigger element. Okay, so the first thing we do is find all the action triggers that are ancestors of the clicked element, parse each action trigger. So I guess I'm just calling them action triggers. Parse each action trigger, get the name of the switch, the action, and the context. Remove all actions that have been stopped or triggered by closer ancestors. For each triggered switch, find the switch using the context parameter. If present, check if the switch is on, turn switch on or off, applying custom switch name. If present, auto deactivate activated switches if they should be. Yeah, I think this is actually pretty good. So I think I already did what I was hoping to do. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I could do like a simple example, right? So let's paste this in here, and we can have it in regular HTML, and we'll delete that. We'll delete that. We'll delete this, and so this is switches, and we'll do like sidebar. Switch actions is sidebar, and we have a new syntax for that. So okay. And we want switch stop to be sidebar, but switch actions to be sidebar off, close sidebar, and the content. So yeah, that should work. And that can be our first test, right? Okay, so we got that. Let's go in here, say like updated docs, push that out. Okay, so now I just want to read through this final code that we've spent the last 5 videos working on and just make sure that it makes sense to us and that everything is kind of happening in the way that we expect. So I'll close this. I can leave this file that we depend on here. We checked this widget.js, and now we're going to review all the code by reading through it. And one second, I'll be right back. Just going to pause real quick. Okay, and I'm back. So now we're going to review all the code. And you can skip over this part, but it might be interesting, not sure. Okay, so we got the Bling library, which gives us these aliases for query selector and query selector all. That's nice. We have this getParents function, which also allows us to include the current element. We have parse switch action attributes, parse switch attributes, parse switch stop attributes, and parse switch on attributes. Those are all useful for parsing the data attributes. We have is string a number, which, yeah, okay. So we're just making sure that that's a number. Okay, so let's go through the code. So first, we're keeping track of process switches. We find all the action triggers. We're finding all the action triggers that are ancestors of the click element. Get action elements from target and parents. And I'm going to say includes stops to stop elements. Okay. So we got all the action elements. Then we parse each. So yeah, I guess let's dig into it, right? So get action elements. So what I would expect is that this is a multi-selector, right? So we're selecting data switch actions and data switch stop. We're getting the parents of the element, including the current element, using the selector that we just defined, and we're returning the action element. So that should just be an array of elements that each have these attributes on them. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is parse each action trigger, get the name of the switch, the action, and the context. Okay, so we have unfiltered actions. We're going to do get actions data. This is expecting the parents, so all the ancestors in a list, starting with the one that's closest. Okay, so get actions data. We're going to loop through the action elements. We have the accumulator, which is an array, and we get the action element. We're going to see if the action element matches stop. If it does, we're going to put it inside of this. We're gonna see if the action element matches stop. So it's a stop element. Okay. Yep. Okay. So there's a problem here, which is that I know, so earlier when I was writing the code, I was like, this doesn't matter because this is never going to happen. But what if there is, what if this selector here matches an element that has a switch action and a switch stop on it? And what if they're even for different elements? right? Because this could be a stop for switch name 1, and then this could be an action for switch name 2, right? And in that case, we don't want to miss out on the action for switch name 2 just because we're parsing the one for the other one. But then there's the related problem, which is the one that I said shouldn't matter. If we have a stop and an action both on switch name 1, then we don't want it to trigger because you should never do that. Why would you put a stop on the same as the action? Unless maybe it should. Should it trigger? Who knows, right? So right now is when we get to decide. So do we want that action? So if the stop is on the trigger, on the same element as the trigger, and you click that trigger, should that trigger or not? Well, let's think of a case where you wouldn't want that to trigger. I'm pretty sure, so what if you have a trigger inside of a trigger, and you put that stop there, and validating that trigger that's there, why wouldn't you just remove the trigger then? Because if you want it to just stop, you would just remove that. So there's no case where I can see that you would want the stop to stop the trigger because you just remove it, right? So if there's, what I'm going to default to is if there's a trigger and there's a stop on the same element targeting the same switch, we're gonna make the action trigger. Okay, so that means first of all, we don't want an else here. We want another if. So in this case, so if I just keep it, shoot, what did I do? Why is the syntax messed up? I don't understand. Well, who knows, right? I'm sure there's a reason. Okay, so if we just keep it like this, what am I doing wrong? Why? Okay, well, if we just keep it like this stop is going to override the actions because later when we process the actions, we are removing all of the actions that have already been processed before. So the stop counts as an action. So if it gets added to the array first, which in this case it does. Oh yeah. Okay. So actions. This. So we want to have this, and then we want to have oh geez. This is weird. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so in this case, the stop would come first, so it would remove the action if it's on the same element and targeting the same switch. If we put this first, this is going to be added to the array first, and so it's going to override the stop. Like, really, what did I do wrong here? Why are you messing with me? Let's lint this. There are 3 functions in this file. Our function is only available ooh, awesome. So that's an enough. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you for catching that syntax highlighter. I'm going to stop doubting my syntax highlighter, right? Okay. So, yeah, let's see. Is there anything else? Well, let's copy it again. Yep. Oh, jeez. Okay. 3 warnings, but function. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Wait. Unused variable. Get action. Get actions data. Huh? Oh. Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so I think we fixed this, and I think it's nicer than it was. Reduce will go through the action elements one at a time in the order that we want them to be, and concat them in the order we want them to be. For each keeps them in the same order. Accumulator concats them in the same order. So boom, they're all in the same order. So we've just, basically we have a group of elements. So we have 3 trigger elements. They could have an unlimited number of actions on them, right? So we just expanded that into how many actions they have on them. So we've gone from 3 elements to possibly, say, like 20 actions. Or let's keep it small, 10 actions, right? Okay, so now we have 10 actions right in a row, and now what are we going to do? So we get the actions back, and the actions are going to look like this with just a name, or they're going to have a type and a context. Okay, so let's go back here, get actions data. We are then going to process the unfiltered actions. Okay, unfiltered actions. Process actions. Remove all actions with, let's say, targeting the same switch name as another action before them. Okay. I do kind of like having a general example, but this should live outside. And so we have like 1 toggle, 2 stop, 2 on, 5 on, 6 on, 6 stop, 6 off, 1 on. 1 toggles, 2 does nothing, 5 turns on, 6 turns on, 8 turns off, and the last one doesn't fire. Okay, that makes sense. And I'll put this example data right there. Okay, so we have actions, which I immediately redefined. What am I doing? Okay, so yeah, I can't loop through an empty array. Okay, so what are these? Let's call it, I mean, we call them unfiltered actions before, so let's call them unfiltered actions here. Ooh. Unfiltered actions, we're looping through current action, all process actions is an empty array. We're seeing if it's, nope. Okay, so we never use this current action thing again? No, we do. Okay, I'll call this unfiltered action, current unfiltered action. Okay, so we're looping through the unfiltered action. There's no point at which we stop. So I'm going to just change this to a for each. And we can do this. Unfiltered action. Okay, so if let's say let already processed equals that all processed actions. Okay, so already processed let's say was already processed. I like having a verb to start booleans, like is or was. And is always better. Okay, is already processed. So we look through all the processed actions and we see if the processed action, the processed action's name is equal to the unfiltered action's name. And if one of those matches, sum is going to return true, and so that's going to be already processed. In that case, we're just going to skip it. Okay? And okay. So one thing I sometimes think about is like filter and map. Is it appropriate to do other activities in those that like have side effects? And I think in general it's not a good practice, especially because, you know, in functional programming, the whole point is no side effects. And even though we do have side effects here all over the place, right? I think it's good, you know, that filter just means filter. You're just filtering it. But the idea that I'm looping through everything already, and I could just be doing the filter, yeah, why don't I, right? So yeah, sometimes, because I could just like have, oh no, I don't think I could, right? Because I'm accumulating these. So maybe I could do like a reduce or something. Well, anyways, I'm gonna just leave it how it is. Okay, so if it's already processed, if it's not already processed, add it to the all processed actions. We'll put that at the bottom because that's not really the main point of this function. We're going to say if it has an action type, and we're going to say like only actions, only triggered actions have types, not stop actions. Okay. Then we say if action type, push it into the actions. Okay, and let's call this actions to trigger. And let's look for anywhere we have actions. Okay. And let's look for all processed actions, and let's just call this processed actions. Okay, so we have okay, so it is already sorry, I'm just thinking about stuff. So we have whether it's already been processed. If it hasn't already been processed and it's a triggered action, add it to these actions to trigger, and then add it to the processed action so we can check the next one. And this is going to be that. And let's just get the current, and it's not there. So, geez, sorry, I just went everywhere. Okay, so it's not there. Okay, so I didn't miss any of those. Okay, so we're going to add it to there, and then we're going to return actions to trigger. So this function is a little weird to me. Yeah, it's a little weird to me. but I guess it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear, right? So I guess let's like write out some code, right? So like we can say like, or documentation. So we could say like loop through all unfiltered actions, um, check if action has already occurred. How do you spell occurred? I think it's with 2 R's. Okay, check if action has already occurred earlier. Okay. 3, save action, or like add action to actions that should be triggered. If action is not a stop action, add actions to actions that should be triggered, and that's it. That's the main thing of what it's doing. Okay, sweet. So now let's go back to where this is called. So now we have a bunch of actions to trigger, and let's call them that. Actions to trigger, actions, action to trigger, okay. I think that is it. Okay. Whew. Okay, so now we have the actions to trigger, and that's going to give us back an array of objects that each of those actions has a name, a type, and a context. And we're going to get the target switches from each of these objects. Get target switches. So should it not be called get target switch? Is it getting multiple? Let's find out. Okay, so get target switches gets an action right. Okay, so like a single action can sorry, I'm gonna just pause for a second because there's some music in the background. I'll be right back. Okay, and I'm back. So we have about 15 minutes left. Hopefully we'll get through reading this code. We'll kind of understand what's happening to better, and then next time around, I think we're gonna like just design the tests, and we might get to running them next time, but we might not. But hopefully we do. Maybe we'll make just like a really simple, test, and then like make it look better as time goes on. Okay, so, and the reason is because eventually, like I said, I want to release this library to the public, so I want there to be like some cool examples that people can try out and, see how it works. Yeah, but maybe that's way down the line because I really do just kind of want to get to the other libraries that I'm building, build those out, finish them, and then finish the second version of Artisfy, which I ideally want to release sometime in the next 3 months. Okay, so here we have get target switches. So the action to trigger, this could be like turn on switch name, right? This can trigger multiple switches. So that's why we get multiple switches back from this. Okay, so now we know the actions have a name, a type, and a context. Let's get the target switches. So we have the name, the context, and the element. What, do we have the element here? So get target switches, let's make sure. So get actions data is going to have to give me an element back. And I do. So I have the action element, I have it right here, I set it on the action. Okay, so my documentation isn't up to date here. So that's gonna have an element on it too. And now let's go back to the get target switches. We have name, context, lm, and I just want to see name, context, lm, and type. So we don't want to use type here? I guess we do not need to know the type because if we go up here, yeah, so we're checking the type here. Okay. Oh, and action to trigger, that should be right here too. Awesome. Okay, so let's go back to this. Get target switches. Okay, so we do this, we put together the selector. This is one of the coolest things I've done in this whole project, this selector right here. So this targets the switch that is space separated, and then it also targets it when it has parentheses right after it. So it's going to match all of the switches exactly no matter what, because the switch name can either have a space after it or it can have an open parentheses after it. So this matches all of them. So switch elements. Okay, if we have a context, if the context is ancestors, the switch elements are going to be get parents. So I guess the question is, should it include the current element where we look? Should we be able to have a trigger on an element that triggers itself, and so it is a widget itself? I say why not, right? So for this, we're going to have one more argument, and we have, oh no. What happened here? Oh no, okay, wait. No. So I think I might have gotten rid of the parents function that I wrote before that's supposed to be able to include the current element, because it's not here. Maybe I wrote it in a different file. Oh no. This is troubling a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to search here for get parents. Include current element is what I want. Oh, and it's in here. It's in utils, DOM utils. Okay, so we have two. We have two get parents. That's great. Okay. Well, I guess let's take a tiny little sidetrack. Let's delete this, first of all. Element, position, this, just please be the same. It is the same. So we can just have DOM utils. So I'll create that. I don't know if this should even be in here. So I'm gonna leave it in there. Contains child element. Contains element. Okay. So I have contains element and contains child element. If I change this name, does it match? It does. Okay, so I don't know. For each all children, those look the same. Okay, so we need to delete this too. So we're getting rid of this utils. Let's search real quick for contains child element, right? Because that's the one we deleted, right? Contains child element. Okay, so we weren't using that anywhere. That didn't change. Get parents. I guess we could search this. We changed it one other place, but that's fine. I'm not going to be working at that switch anymore. Okay, so that works, and that works. And element offset, I didn't change any of this. And separate visibility, I didn't change that. Okay, so that works. And now I just want to make sure that in the original, I'm including DOM utils and not utils. We got it. And let's make sure here we're importing from DOM utils and not utils. Okay, cool. So now I can delete this. Okay, jeez. What a nightmare. Okay, so here, what do we do? I don't know. Oh man, we did a lot. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a commit real quick. I have to go soon. Removed details, JS. Let's uncheck this. Here, added, prevent, default. Class, I don't know, event, triggering class. Okay, we got that. Okay, updated docs, I can do like switch.js, updated docs, renamed variables, made process actions here, and I think we fixed something. Yeah, so we fixed get actions data. I think it's too long. Is it? What's going on? Oh, I didn't click anything. Okay. Well, anyways, we can have this in here in the description. Okay. So, boom. This is a lot of progress so far. I know that I am committing broken code, but you know, when have I not been comfortable with doing that? Okay. So, yeah. So it's broken because we don't have this. Let's go back into the DOM utils. Make sure we pass in true here. Okay, so now if you specify ancestors for the context, it's going to look on the current element as well. I don't know why. I guess I was just feeling like it. No, I think it makes sense. I mean, if you have a trigger, when you click it, why have to have, a parent element wrapped around it just to have it trigger itself? Okay, so we got this, else if is string a number, so we're making sure that this is a number, that it's like, either 0 through 9 repeating. We get the numeric position. I'm going to just call this numeric position number, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call this the position number. Okay, we got all switch elements, and then what is this? We splice. Oh yeah, okay, I remember this. So splice, when you call splice and you remove an element, it's going to return that removed element inside of an array. Returns element at position number, index inside an array. Okay. Splice will return. Oh my goodness. Okay, so then we set switch elements to that. So like if we passed it in 9, it's going to get all the switch elements that could be targeted, and it's going to take the the 10th one out and put it in an array and assign it to switch elements. Okay, else we have the simple case where we just set switch elements to query selector all and the selector that we built up here, which will just give us all the switch elements. Jeez. Okay, that works. And then, wow, okay, we have a doozy in here. Get switches by name from elements. So this is doing a lot. This get target switches. So as the last thing, get switches by name from elements. Get target switches. Okay, so up here, get target switches. Target switches. Get target switch elements, because this is going to be clearer, okay? And that switches, oh shoot, oh no. Oh, because we need the name. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, well I was thinking about separating this out, but we need the name. Okay, whatever, we'll just keep it here, I guess. That's annoying. Okay, just because this is doing too much, right? So get switches by name. So the name is going to be the action, no, the action name? This should be the switch name. It is. It is the switch name, because the action name is on type, right? So that would be that. But we're not using that. Also, I don't know if I can use type like that, because I don't know if that's a reserved word. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Maybe it is. Who knows? Okay. So we have the switch name, and we have the switch elements, and we want to get the switches data from the elements using the name. Okay, wait. Actions to trigger. We have the name up here too. Okay. Target switch elements. It's done. It's done. We're doing it this way. Okay. So get target switch elements, and we're gonna copy that and search for get target switches, which is the old name. Let's actually make sure this isn't being used anywhere else. Okay, it's not. And let's replace that. And then let's just return the switch elements here. Oh, this is so much nicer. I'm excited about that. Okay, this will be C. Something in here will be B. I don't know what this is going to be doing yet, or what I'm going to say it's doing. Okay, so now we're going to do action switch. Oh, this is awesome. And target switch elements. Okay, and we're going to say get switches by name from elements. What? Well, I thought we had this function. What did I do? What? Why isn't it matching this? Oh, that's weird. Okay. What? Oh. Wait, no. Get switches data by name from elements. So it wasn't even named the same? Okay. Yeah. Okay, I like this better. Get switches by name from elements. Okay, that's fine. So, and then up here, we'll say like, let target switches equal this. Get the target switches from the elements. Get the target switch data. Get the switch data from the target elements using the switch name. Okay, and let's go down here. Okay, so this returned the elements. Now we want to go loop through all of the elements, and we want to get the piece of data that's associated with the switch name. Okay, so we're going to loop through all the elements. So let's say that. I should probably write documentation strings for this too, but I'm not going to. Okay, so loop through the switch elements. I'm not going to right now. I might later. Okay. Switches list. So parse switch elements. So to get all the switch data. 3, filter through the switch data until you find the current switch name. Okay, so we're going to do a find on the switches list. Parse switch attributes is going to give us an array of objects, each which have a name, auto, and custom name. Switch data, so this is going to loop through these and find the one that matches the name that we passed in up here. I don't know, we could have a for here, I guess. Add the element to the switch data. Okay, and then we're returning the switch data. So we know that, we know for sure that each of these elements has the switch specified on it because we just look for it, right, up here. So we know it has it. Now we're just getting the data off of it, which is going to include the name, whether auto is on or not, and the custom name. Okay, and parse data attributes. Okay, so I have a problem with this. Or not a problem. I just want to know something about this. So if I do this, if I copy this code and I put it in the console, and then I make one of these functions, and then I guess let's just edit the body. Oh, yeah, because we don't got anything else. data switches and switch name. So what if I just have the switch name now? That's what I'm wondering. What does it return? And I guess I could also just like look at the code. So then we just get back the name. I think what I would rather get back from that is like auto undefined and custom name undefined too. Oh, but I guess no. I mean, they will be undefined on it, right? Because I'm getting back the object. Yeah, I like that. I guess, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so 1 second. I have to go real quick. I'll be right back. Hello, I am back. Let's continue looking at this code. I really don't have that much more time, but hopefully 5 or 10 minutes will be enough. Okay, so where did we leave off? We wrote these documentation strings. We're adding the element, get switches by name from elements. I really like that we added this step because now we get the switch elements and then we get the target switches data from them using the name and the target switch elements. So yeah, so we loop through the elements, we parse the switch attributes, we find the we find the set of attributes that matches the current switch name, and then we add the element onto that data, and we return the switch data, and then we return all of the switches. Okay, awesome. Okay, so turn switch on or off, applying custom switch name if present. So we loop through all of the target switches. We have the target switch here. If the action to trigger type is toggle, we toggle it. If it's on, we turn it on. If it's off, we turn it off. So let's look at toggle. Okay, so we see, is it on? If it's on, let's turn it off. If it's else, let's turn it on and trigger callbacks for this. Okay, so we already looked at this code kind of earlier, so I'm not going to review this code right now. Let's look at is on, element matches, data switched on, tilde, I think that's called, and then the switch name. So data switched on has a bunch of space separated values, each with switch names, so this will match that. Okay, so and is off is just the reverse of is on. And let's see what turn on and turn off do real quick. So first of all, we check is it off, right? Because that's the only case where we actually want to go through the work of turning it on. So if it is off, we're going to continue. We're going to get the turned on switch names, and that is going to just give us parse switched on attribute, so that's going to give us this, and then we're going to map over it to just give the list of switch names. Okay, so we got the switch names. We're going to push the new name into it, and then we're going to, if it has a custom name, also push that into it, and then we're going to replace the attribute with all of the switch names joined, which is going to include the old ones, because all we did was push the new names into it, we didn't replace. and we're going to trigger the callbacks. Okay, and turn off, we check if it's on, because that's the only case we want to turn it off. But we do want to trigger the callbacks either way. Okay, so then the work of doing it off is we get all the switch names, and we already looked at this function. We filter the switch names, so we do a filter. We say name doesn't match, and custom name doesn't match. And if both of those don't match, then we're going to keep the switch name in that list. Otherwise, we're going to filter it out. Name matches, custom name. I know I rewrote this before also. I just thinking in positives instead of negatives, I think helps. So if the name matches, and the custom name or the custom name matches, so name matches or custom name matches, we want to return false, otherwise return true. And I know I could just wrap that in parentheses and put an exclamation point before it, but I think this is just clear for my brain. Return true. Okay. So if name matches or custom name matches, we're going to return false. Otherwise, we're going to return true. Okay, so we're going to remove the passed-in switch name and the optional custom name, and then we're going to see if there are any switch names left. And we don't want to check the switch names, we want to check the filtered switch names. And again, we want to join the filtered switch names. Okay, so if there are filtered switch names, we're going to replace all the attribute values with the new ones. Removing, yeah, I mean, it's obvious, we just filtered through them. So after we filtered out the other ones, so set attribute filtered, okay. And then else, switch object element, remove attribute altogether. So remove the attribute entirely if there are no active switches. Okay, that's cool. So now we can tell if a switch has ever been turned on an element or not, and it's still on. It's going to have the data switch on attribute. Otherwise, if all of the switches have been switched off on it, we can tell because it's not going to have this data switched on attribute. So I think we just went through all of the functionality pretty much. Process switches keep track of all switches and their elements that were affected by this click. So we have processed switches, and we're going to concat the target switches onto them, and the target switches are going to include name, element, custom name, and auto, and then we're going to automatically turn off other switches. Okay, and this takes the process switches, right? So it gets all of the ones that were already processed. It gets the turned on ones. It loops through all the turned on switches. Gets all of their names. And we already went through this just a second ago. It gets all of the switch data from the element from the current switched on element. Okay, all switches from current element. Okay, so let's say like, it switches from turned on element. I don't know. So yeah, so we get the turned on ones. We get, let's say, yeah, all switches. That makes sense. Because these are just the turned on ones. These are all of them. And we're going to loop through all of the switches. And I think I use switch object elsewhere, so I'm just going to do that. So we loop through all of the switches. We see, is it in the turned on switches? If it's not, so it only includes the turned on switches. So we want to, the point of this, of looping through all this, is we want to get the data from it, right? So we want to get the name, the custom name, and the auto, but we only want to include the ones that have been switched on. So if it's in the switched on ones, and then if it's not in the switched on ones, we want to return false. If auto is set to no auto, we're going to return false because we're not going to automatically turn it off in that case. And then we're going to filter out switches that were already activated. And I'll put this part in parentheses by matching their name and element. So switch has been processed. We're going to loop through all of the processed switches. And we're going to see if the process switch name matches the current switch object's name, and if the process switch element matches the current switch element, which we get from here. And if the switch has been processed already, we return false. So we filter those out too. So basically, we're getting the turned on switches. We're looping through all of the switches on this current element. We're making sure we only keep the turned on one's data. We also only want to keep it if auto is not turned off. And we also only want to keep it if it hasn't been previously processed through this event, through this like turn. If all of those are true, so it is currently turned on, it hasn't already been processed, and the AutoClose functionality is turned on, we will keep it, and we will turn it off. So we'll loop through it, switches to turn off, and we will turn it off. Okay, cool. And that's a total review of the code. I think it looks pretty good to me right now. I think, we'll probably run into some bugs next time when we try testing it out, but I'm pretty proud of it. It reads pretty nicely to me. Everything's like pretty well documented. I'm a little worried about this when function and all of these like, nested loops and how inefficient that might get. And I'm a little nervous about the function we just went through with the automatically turn off other switches, because we're literally going through every switch on the page that has been turned on, and we're looping through it, and we're looping through all of them. So if there's like, possibly what, like 20 switches that are turned on, I guess that's really not a lot. So it's probably fine. but we're also like, we're looping through them again, right? Because we're looping through them here, we're looping through them here. So like 20 turns into, you know, this loop plus this nested. I guess we're not like actually looping through everyone here. We're just looping through a few there. So 20, I think, could turn into like, I don't know, 60 loops, which again, like, isn't terrible, but it's not great either. I'm not sure of a better way to do this. If you have some ideas, especially like the most important thing to me is like, does it read well? You know, like, can I go in here and figure out what this library is doing without like being a genius, or like, you know, having worked with the code for like a few weeks or whatever. Like, can I just come in here and just kind of like read this code? Because like I'll honestly like sacrifice, 50 milliseconds if it means that the code is easier to read. And I know, 50 milliseconds can add up a lot. So it's not worth it in every case. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty proud of this. Um, this code. I think as long as you're not like using a lot of advanced stuff, it'll probably work fine. But we'll see. I mean, I'll definitely be playing around with this and optimizing it as time goes on, and hopefully that doesn't lead to it being less well documented or less easy to understand. Hopefully, it stays just as easy to understand. Okay, so I gotta go. I gotta run. That's all for now. I sincerely appreciate you watching this video, and hopefully you learned something. And I'll see you next time, and we'll start testing out this library. Okay, goodbye, and thank you for watching.